The words hit me like a physical blow, echoing in the silence of our family kitchen where I'd grown up making Saturday morning pancakes with my sister Emma. "It's better if you're not there, Marcus." You understand, don't you? Emma's day should be perfect. My mother's voice was gentle, apologetic even, but the knife twisted all the same. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. The wedding invitation, my own sister's wedding invitation, lay crumpled in my trembling hands. "Perfect," I repeated slowly, tasting the bitterness of the word. "And I would make it imperfect?" Mom reached across the kitchen island, her manicured fingers hovering near my arm, but not quite touching. "You know how people talk, honey. The whispers, the stares. Emma doesn't want anything to overshadow her special day. The accident. It always came back to the accident. 2 years ago, I'd been the golden boy, Harvard law graduate, youngest partner track at Morrison & Associates, engaged to Sarah Wellington, daughter of a federal judge. I had everything mapped out. The corner office, the house in Greenwich, the perfect life that would make my parents beam with pride at country club dinners. Then came that rainy Tuesday night. The drunk driver who ran the red light. The 3 weeks in a coma. The months of physical therapy. The scars that spiderwebbed across the left side of my face, turning what had once been called classically handsome into something people looked away from. Sarah had lasted exactly 6 weeks after I woke up. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she'd whispered, her engagement ring clicking against the hospital bed rail as she placed it there. I can't." The law firm had been more diplomatic. "Take all the time you need," they'd said. But when I was ready to return, suddenly there were concerns about client-facing roles and public perception. I was quietly shuffled to document review, buried in a basement office where no one had to see me. But Emma was supposed to be different. She was my little sister, the one who used to make up elaborate fantasy worlds where I was always the hero. She'd held my hand in the hospital, tears streaming down her face, promising that nothing would change between us. "Where is Emma?" I asked now, looking around the kitchen as if she might materialize. Shouldn't she be part of this conversation? My parents exchanged a look. Dad finally spoke. "She's at her final dress fitting." "Marcus, son, try to understand. The venue, the photographers, all of Emma's friends from college, they don't know about..." "About what?" "About me?" I laughed, but it came out sharp and bitter. "I'm her brother." I was supposed to walk her down the aisle since Grandpa died. I was going to give the toast I've been working on for months. "We know," Mom said softly, "and we're sorry. But Brandon's family is very traditional, very concerned with appearances. They've already expressed some concerns. Brandon, the investment banker with the trust fund and the family pedigree that stretched back to the Mayflower. Emma had been dating him for 8 months, and they'd been engaged for 4. I'd met him exactly 3 times, and each interaction had left me feeling like something unpleasant he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "So that's it?" I stood up slowly, my left leg still stiff from the accident. 26 years of being her big brother, and I'm uninvited because I might make the photos look bad? "It's not forever," Dad said quickly. "Just for the ceremony. Maybe you could come to the reception later, after the formal photos?" No. The word came out harder than I intended. If I'm not good enough for the wedding, I'm not good enough for any of it. I walked toward the door, then paused. "Tell me something. Did Emma ask for this, or did you decide for her?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. That night, alone in my apartment, the modest 1-bedroom I'd moved to after losing the condo I could no longer afford, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The scars had faded from angry red to pale silver, but they still traced their irregular pattern from my left temple down to my jaw. My left eye drooped slightly, a permanent reminder of the nerve damage. I'd spent 2 years trying to accept this face, this new reality. But now, looking at myself, I felt something darker taking root. If my own family was ashamed of me, if I was something to be hidden away, then maybe it was time to disappear entirely. The idea came to me slowly, like dawn breaking over a landscape I'd never seen before. I called in sick to work the next morning and drove to the library. For hours, I researched, taking notes on a legal pad like I was preparing for a case. Which, in a way, I was. Emma's wedding was in 3 weeks. The guest list included 200 of the city's most prominent families, politicians, business leaders, old money aristocrats who still mattered in our social circles. The kind of people who read the society pages religiously and donated to charity galas for the photo opportunities. By evening, I had a plan. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. I liquidated my investment accounts, closed my bank accounts, and transferred everything to an offshore account I'd set up years ago for a client. I put my apartment up for sublease and sold most of my belongings. To anyone watching, it looked like I was simply downsizing, getting my life together after the accident. I used my connections from the law firm to gather information. The venue was the Rosecliff Mansion, an opulent estate that hosted only the most exclusive events. The guest list read like a who's who of New England society. The wedding photographer was renowned for his work with celebrity clients. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a statement, a declaration of Brandon's family's status and wealth. 4 days before the wedding, I submitted my resignation at the law firm. I need a fresh start, I told my supervisor, which was true enough. I cleaned out my office and said goodbye to the few colleagues who still spoke to me. 2 days before the wedding, I received a text from Emma. "I'm sorry about everything. I love you." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I love you too. Have a beautiful day." It was the last communication I would have with my family for a very long time. On the morning of Emma's wedding, I woke up in a hotel room 30 miles from the venue. I'd been staying there for 3 days, invisible and forgotten. I showered, shaved carefully around my scars, and put on the one good suit I'd kept, navy blue, tailored, expensive. The same suit I'd worn to my engagement party, back when I was someone else. At 2 p.m., while Emma was probably having her hair done and my parents were busy with last-minute preparations, I walked into the lobby of the Rosecliff Mansion. I'd been there before, at various charity events and corporate functions. The staff didn't recognize me. Why would they? I was nobody now. "Excuse me," I said to the young woman at the concierge desk, my voice steady and professional. "I'm Marcus Thornton with the Herald Tribune. I'm here to cover the Wellington-Ashford wedding for our society pages." She smiled brightly. The Herald Tribune was the city's most prominent newspaper, known for its extensive coverage of high society events. I'd chosen it carefully, knowing they were legitimate enough to be expected, but large enough that one random reporter wouldn't be questioned. "Of course, Mr. Sam Thornton." "The ceremony begins at 4. Would you like me to show you to the press area?" "That would be perfect, thank you." She led me through the mansion's ornate halls, past rooms being decorated with white roses and crystal chandeliers. I glimpsed staff members rushing around with last-minute preparations, photographers testing equipment, caterers arranging elaborate displays. The press area was a discreet section at the back of the ceremony space, positioned to capture the proceedings without interfering. 3 other reporters were already there, setting up cameras and checking notes. I nodded politely and took a seat, pulling out the small digital recorder I'd bought specifically for this purpose. At 3:30, the guests began to arrive. I watched through my camera lens as the city's elite filed in, dressed in their finest. I recognized faces from newspaper photos, politicians I'd seen on television, business leaders whose companies I'd worked with in my previous life. They air-kissed and whispered among themselves, their voices creating a sophisticated hum that filled the ornate space. At 3:45, the groom's party took their places. Brandon stood at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his face confident and composed. His groomsmen flanked him, all of them looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine advertisement for expensive whiskey or luxury watches. At 3:50, my parents were escorted to their seats in the front row. Mom wore a pale lavender dress that had probably cost more than my monthly salary, and Dad had clearly been to his barber that morning. They looked proud, excited, perfect. At 3:55, the music began. Emma appeared at the back of the aisle, and even through my anger and hurt, I had to admit she looked beautiful. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk, her veil flowing behind her like a waterfall. She was radiant, glowing with happiness, every inch the perfect bride. She walked alone down the aisle. No father to give her away, no brother to escort her. Just Emma, beautiful and solitary, moving toward her new life. I watched through the camera lens as she reached the altar, as Brandon took her hands, as they exchanged vows in voices too quiet for me to hear from my position in the back. I watched my parents dab at their eyes with tissues, watched the guests smile and nod approvingly. It was perfect, absolutely perfect, which made what happened next all the more devastating. As the minister began the final blessing, I stood up quietly and moved toward the main aisle. The other reporters glanced at me curiously, but I was just another professional doing his job, getting a better angle for the shot. I walked slowly down the center aisle, my camera raised, the click of the shutter barely audible over the minister's words. Guests turned to look at me with mild interest, the society photographer, capturing their moment in the sun. I was halfway to the altar when Emma saw me. Her face went completely white. Her hands, clasped in Brandon's, began to tremble visibly. The minister continued speaking, but Brandon followed her gaze and turned to look at me. His reaction was immediate and visceral. His face contorted with disgust, his body recoiling as if he'd seen something repulsive. He actually took a step back from Emma, his hands dropping hers. The whispers started then, rippling through the assembled guests like a stone dropped in still water. "Who is that? What happened to his face? How did he get in here?" I continued walking, my camera clicking steadily, capturing every moment. Brandon's horrified expression, Emma's tears beginning to fall, my parents rising from their seats, my father's face red with fury and embarrassment. "Security!" someone called out, but I was already at the altar. I lowered my camera and looked directly at Emma. Up close, I could see her makeup beginning to run, her perfect composure cracking. "Hello, little sister," I said quietly, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "Congratulations on your wedding day." Emma opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I turned to Brandon, who was staring at me with undisguised revulsion. "And congratulations to you, Brandon." "I'm Marcus, Emma's brother. We haven't been properly introduced." Brandon's voice, when he found it, was sharp and angry. "What are you doing here?" "You weren't invited." The words carried clearly through the silent room. Someone in the crowd gasped. "No," I said, my voice calm and measured. "I wasn't." Emma's own brother wasn't invited to her wedding because my face might upset the guests, because I might make the photos look bad, because apparently surviving a car accident makes me unsuitable for polite society. The murmur that went through the crowd was like a physical wave. I could see phones coming out, social media fingers twitching. This would be online within minutes. "You see," I continued, addressing the room now, rather than just the wedding party. Emma and I used to be very close. She was my little sister, my best friend. When I was in the hospital, she promised nothing would change between us. But when it came time for her wedding, our parents decided I wasn't presentable enough for this crowd. I gestured to the assembled guests, many of whom were now actively filming. Emma finally found her voice. "Marcus, please." "Please what?" I turned back to her. "Please disappear quietly so you can have your perfect day. Please pretend I don't exist so you don't have to explain your damaged brother to your new in-laws." Brandon stepped forward, his face furious. "You need to leave, now! This is Emma's day and you're ruining it." I smiled, the expression pulling at my scars. Emma's day. Yes, it should be perfect, shouldn't it? No ugly reminders of real life, no damaged goods cluttering up the beautiful photos. I raised my voice so the entire room could hear. I just wanted to congratulate my sister on her wedding and to let everyone know that the Ashford family's standards for family are very selective. They prefer their relatives to be aesthetically pleasing. The chaos that erupted then was everything I had hoped for, and more terrible than I had imagined. Security guards rushed forward, but I didn't resist. I allowed them to escort me toward the back of the room while guests exploded into conversation, phones flashing, the perfect ceremony dissolving into scandal and gossip. As I reached the back doors, I turned for one last look. Emma was sobbing openly now, her perfect makeup ruined, her dream day shattered. Brandon was arguing loudly with someone, gesturing frantically. My parents were surrounded by concerned guests, my father's face purple with rage and humiliation. I had wanted them to feel the rejection and shame they had made me feel. I had succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By that evening, videos of the incident were trending on social media. Wedding Brother Gate became a hashtag. The story was picked up by gossip blogs, then mainstream news outlets. Scarred brother crashes sister's wedding after being uninvited ran on the front page of 3 major newspapers. The reaction was not what I had expected. Instead of condemning me as a bitter, vindictive man who had ruined his sister's wedding, the public largely rallied to my side. The videos clearly showed Brandon's disgust, my parents' shame, the family's rejection of their own son and brother based on his appearance. Disability rights advocates picked up the story. Burn survivors and other people with visible differences shared their own stories of discrimination and family rejection. The Ashford family, prominent in banking and politics, found themselves at the center of a media storm about discrimination and ableism. Brandon's family, so concerned with their reputation, watched in horror as they became pariahs in their own social circles. Several business deals were quietly canceled. Brandon himself was asked to take a leave of absence from his investment firm pending the resolution of the public relations situation. Emma called me 3 days after the wedding, her voice barely a whisper. "Marcus, please, can we talk?" I almost didn't answer. I was sitting in my hotel room, watching the news coverage of my own actions, feeling hollow and empty despite my apparent victory. "What is there to talk about, Em?" "I'm sorry." She was crying, her words broken by sobs. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to be uninvited. Mom and Dad said it would be better, that it would cause problems with Brandon's family, but I should have fought harder. I should have stood up for you." "Should have," I repeated, "but you didn't." "I know. I was weak and I was wrong and I'm sorry. I've lost everything. Brandon called off our honeymoon. His parents won't speak to me. The whole wedding is a disaster, but I deserve it. I chose them over you, and that was unforgivable." I closed my eyes, feeling the first cracks in the wall of anger I'd built around my heart. "Marcus, please." I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but you're my brother. You're the only family I have left now." "What do you mean?" "Mom and Dad." She took a shuddering breath. "They're furious about the media attention. They're blaming me for not controlling the situation better. Dad says I've humiliated the family, that I should have known better than to marry into a family with such rigid standards." So even in this, even in the destruction I had wreaked, my parents were finding ways to avoid taking responsibility for their own choices. "Where are you now?" I asked. "At home." "My apartment?" "Brandon." Brandon said he needed time to think about our marriage, about whether he could be with someone whose family creates this kind of drama. I felt a stab of something that might have been sympathy, quickly followed by a darker satisfaction. Brandon was showing his true colors, abandoning Emma just as she had abandoned me. "Emma," I said slowly, "do you understand why I did what I did?" "Yes," she whispered. "You wanted us to feel what you felt. Rejected, humiliated, ashamed. You wanted us to know what it was like to be treated as something embarrassing. And do you know what it's like now?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a breath. "God, yes." We sat in silence for a long moment, the phone, connection crackling between us. "I can't undo what I did," I said finally. "And I can't undo what you did either, or what Mom and Dad did." "I know." "But Emma, if you really want to try to fix this, to be my sister again, then it has to be different this time. You can't choose other people over family. You can't let shame or embarrassment or other people's opinions decide how you treat the people who love you." "I know," she said again, her voice stronger now. "I want to try, if you'll let me. And if Brandon can't accept me as part of your family, then Brandon isn't the right person for me." It was a good answer, but I wondered if she meant it or if she was just saying what she thought I wanted to hear. 3 weeks later, Emma filed for annulment. Brandon, facing continued media scrutiny and social ostracism, didn't fight it. The marriage that was supposed to cement his family's social standing had instead destroyed it. My parents attempted to reconcile with me through Emma, sending messages about forgiveness and family healing. But they never called themselves, never acknowledged their own role in the destruction of our family. They wanted me to return quietly, to pretend nothing had happened, to be grateful for their conditional acceptance. I wasn't interested. Emma and I met for coffee on a Thursday afternoon, 6 weeks after her wedding day. She looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more real than she had in years. The perfect society princess facade was gone, replaced by something more honest and vulnerable. "I got a job," she said, stirring sugar into her latte. "At a nonprofit, working with families affected by drunk driving accidents." I raised an eyebrow. "That's specific." She looked directly at me, her eyes clear and steady. "I want to understand what you went through. What we put you through. I want to help other families not make the same mistakes we did." We talked for 2 hours about the accident, about the years since, about the ways our family had failed each other. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. As for me, I never went back to my old life. The offshore accounts I'd set up gave me enough money to start over somewhere else. I moved to Portland, Oregon, changed my name, and opened a small legal aid clinic specializing in disability rights. The scars on my face never went away, but I stopped trying to hide them. I started dating again, carefully, cautiously, but with hope. I made new friends who knew me as I was now, not as who I used to be. Emma visited me 6 months later. She was dating someone new, a social worker who worked with trauma survivors, someone who understood that damage didn't make a person less worthy of love. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked me as we walked along the river. What you did at the wedding? I considered the question seriously. I regret that it was necessary, I said finally. I regret that our family got to the point where I felt like public humiliation was the only way to make you understand how you'd hurt me. But you don't regret doing it. No, I don't, because it worked. It forced all of us to confront the truth about who we really were, who we'd become. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can rebuild it properly. Emma nodded slowly. Brandon's family never recovered from the scandal. His father lost his position at the bank. His mother was asked to resign from the boards of 3 different charities. They moved to Europe last month. And how do you feel about that? She was quiet for a long time. I feel sorry for them, she said eventually. They're trapped in a world where appearance matters more than substance, where image is everything. They can't even see how empty that makes their lives. It was a mature response, one the old Emma, the one who had chosen status over family, wouldn't have been capable of. I have something for you, she said, pulling a small wrapped package from her purse. Inside was a photo from our childhood, the 2 of us at a carnival, maybe 10 and 8 years old, both grinning at the camera with cotton candy sticky faces and gap-toothed smiles. I wanted you to remember, she said, before everything got complicated, when we were just brother and sister, and that was enough. I traced the edge of the photo with my finger, remembering that day, remembering who we used to be. We can't go back, I said. I know, but maybe we can go forward. As the people we are now, not the people we were expected to be. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone I was slowly learning to trust again. Someone who had faced the consequences of her choices and was trying to do better. Maybe we can, I agreed. The revenge I had taken wasn't just about punishment, it was about truth. About forcing my family to see what they had become, what their priorities had made them. It was about refusing to disappear quietly, refusing to accept that my worth was determined by my appearance or other people's comfort level with my scars. Emma's perfect wedding day had been destroyed, but from its ashes, we were building something more real. Not perfect, not pretty, but honest. And sometimes that's the most beautiful thing of all. The story of Marcus Thornton, who vanished from his sister's wedding, didn't end with revenge. It ended with redemption. Not the kind where everything goes back to the way it was, but the harder kind, where you build something new from the pieces of what was broken. In the end, disappearing wasn't about becoming invisible. It was about refusing to be erased. About demanding to be seen, scars and all, as someone worthy of love and respect. And that perhaps was the greatest victory of all.